Hello.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to Laughbox.
Laughbox, the podcast for the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. And now, here's your host, Chip Lutz.
Well, here we are, ready for another action-packed episode of Laughbox. I hope this episode finds you well, healthy, with everything that you need. Here in this house, we're choosing joy. Matter of fact, I can't think of anything more joyful than being sequestered with me. I'm not sure my wife feels the same, but I like my company. Within our organization, we are really good at being inclusive. I think that's one of the hallmarks of AATH. But you know as well as I do that it's not the same in most organizations. Most organizations are kind of stuck back in the 60s, maybe the 70s. Well, my guest this week, Lisa Koenecke, she is the Inclusion Ally. She shares some great tips on how you can help your organization move into the 21st century. I hope you like it as much as I did. Cheers.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the podcast. This is Chip Lutz, the unconventional leader, and today I got to talk to another Wisconsinite, somebody I think is pretty cool. I get to talk to Lisa Koenecke. What's funny is that I'm trying to get words out of my mouth, but I can't get them out. So I'm going to let her talk and let you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Chips. Cheers. This is exciting. I am Lisa Koenecke, excited to be here. And, it is a wonderful spring day here with snow on the ground, but it's going to leave soon. And I could talk about myself. Do you want me to just keep going?
I want you to share a little bit about you. Let's talk about Lisa, the woman behind the legend.
The behind the legend, which is great. I'm a born and bred cheesehead, and mint makes me sneeze. And I was a camp director.
Mint makes me sneeze. I think
mint.
I've never heard anybody say that ever on the podcast or otherwise. That's an interesting factual tidbit. I like that.
Thank you. That was my humor in, when I write my proposals and my interesting facts. So I sneeze once and that's it. It's kind of interesting.
Mint makes me sneeze.
And so I was a camp director for 20 years for the YMCA and for Girl Scouts, then a school counselor for 12 years, middle and high school. Currently, I am a counselor educator for a local university. I don't know if I can say that.
I don't care what you say.
I'm going to say Lakeland University here out of Sheboygan, but I teach at the Madison Center, and I'm training the next generation of school counselors, best gig in the world. And I'm also trying to start my little speaker business, of which yet to be named. I know I'm an inclusion ally, but I do a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and just trying to bring it through the lens. My expertise is in LGBT issues, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender issues. However, not everyone's going to pay for gay. So I'm going to open it up and, I'll be the funny gay. In fact, when you had this podcast, I was like, if I ever had a podcast, I might name it, You Can't Catch Gay.
Oh, I like the whole people aren't going to pay for gay. So I think that's hilarious, but that's good stuff right there.
Thanks.
Yeah. And you can't catch gay. I like that as well. Well, I'm excited to talk about, what you do as an inclusion ally and what that looks like, and, helping people understand different things. But before we get into our conversation, I'm just going to ask you a random question.
Love it.
Nothing to do with what we're going to be talking about. All right. So, Lisa, they're making a movie about you, your life.
Yep.
Who's going to play you?
Queen Latifah, absolutely, except she's not white. So then I would probably go to Ellen DeGeneres.
Okay, well, all right. I'm not. You caught me off guard with the Queen Latifah thing at the very beginning. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. All right. Good deal.
Yeah.
All right. I don't even know what to say. All right. So let's talk a little bit about being an inclusion ally. I mean, because and when we were talking a little bit, I was really curious as to what that looks like. What is that? What do you go out and do? Share a little bit with me.
Yep, absolutely. Great question. So for me, a lot of the talk out in the world is diversity, and usually because it's a term that is used like bullying and anxiety and those kind of things. Usually when you hear the word diversity, you just think about race. And
Mhm.
so I want to have people think bigger and broader than that. And the way that it works for me is to think about inclusion. And eventually we want to get to belonging. That would be fantastic. But as things are ebbing and flowing, it's like, okay, let's just start with inclusion, because you can have different people working together, but if you don't respect their voices, their thoughts, their abilities, then you might not have inclusion. And so the analogy that I might use would be that you have a glass of milk, because we're from Wisconsin, so go dairy farmers. And a glass of white milk, if you pour in the chocolate syrup in there and you can see the syrup on the bottom, we've all done that when we were kids, that's diversity. But if you mix the syrup in with the milk, that's inclusion. So, or it could be, a gin and tonic, which is my drink of choice as well,
I'm a vodka tonic guy, so that makes sense. I like that.
Right.
So
The difference there is that they're both white, but you get the idea.
right. So is drinking it then belonging? I mean that because well, no, I'm curious the difference because you said
Right.
we'll eventually get to belonging, but I don't know what the difference is. What's the difference there?
Well, the difference would be that the chocolate milk actually would feel comfortable being a part of your meal, which is interesting because chocolate milk really doesn't go with a whole lot of meals. Hence the reason I use that analogy as well. So, you have to think about what is it going to look like? And again, this is not that I've written a dissertation on this, but I could go way, way in depth, but I don't need to. So you need to start with the inclusion of, making sure that people are feeling comfortable with what they're going to say. And, whether it's an employee or a family member or whatever it might be, that they are there for a reason. And then the belonging comes after that. So it is not just having, we're going to talk about um, LGBT issues in June because it's Pride Month. It's, do you celebrate? Do you include? And are the folks who identify as LGBT, do they feel like they belong all year round? Do you
Mhm.
have gender neutral bathrooms? That kind of thing.
So, in what you're saying, it made me think a little bit on what you said as far as like people feeling comfortable on in the conversation with people that may be a little bit different from them,
Right.
because I think that uh, I don't know, like from my perspective, I'm okay with anybody. I don't really care. I like and dislike pretty much everybody the same.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I could see where if you didn't know about a certain group of people, you might have a little bit of trepidation on, approaching them or talking to them for fear of saying the wrong thing.
Correct. And I think a lot of that has to do, for my example, in my world, it would be that pronouns are getting more popular as more people are identifying it as transgender.
Hmm.
So I'm a 51-year-old woman of white privilege as of the date of this, recording right now. And it's different
And I'm a
generational.
51-year-old male of white privilege.
Hey, there you go. Right on. And so how I look at things might be different than a millennial or even the generation who went before me and blazed the trails. And
Mm.
so there are different ways of looking at how those ebb and flow. And sometimes in the world of diversity, when you think about that, so I'll have a chief diversity officer and we'll put someone of color in there because then we've checked that box. And that may or may not be the best thing to do.
It's funny when you were talking about the pronouns, is that this was a fairly new concept to me 5 years ago when my son was going to school, and he came home
Hmm.
and shared with me that somebody in his dorm room, he referred to the person as they, and I was like, they? What do you mean? Well, and he explained to me, well, they don't uh, see themselves as male or female, they're they. And I was like, I told him, I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. And
Uh-huh.
he was like, well, you just can't fit it. You try to fit everything in your own little box. And I told him, I
Right.
said, no, you just can't go through life making up your own rules. I mean,
Uh-huh.
you're a he or a she, you're an it. You can't be a plural.
Uh-huh.
And he schooled me, as far as things. And it was one of those things where in 5 years we've come a long way on understanding that. But I still think that there's some confusion, and so, like I said, some trepidation on people as far as like, I don't know what to say. Do I automatically introduce myself with my pronouns, or just you know am I just who I am? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that is, one of the things that I'm trying to help people with. It's not that I, as Lisa Koenecke, want to catch you or, you know,
I'm gonna
tisk
catch
tisk you
I'm
or,
gonna be I'm gonna catch you, and then I'm gonna chastise you. You will know these
yeah,
things.
right. No, I don't want to do that. And again, I have a master's in counseling, so I'm kind of a nice person from that vantage point too.
Hmm.
And it's one of those where, again, I love speaking to groups who have these questions because sometimes it's easier talking to, the funny white lesbian than it may be somebody who doesn't look like them. And that sounds horrible, but I'm just trying to say that.
No, but that makes I think it's in some ways less threatening to people that they're
Correct.
getting it from somebody that kind of looks like them versus
Hmm.
somebody that doesn't look like them, and they're telling them something that they don't understand.
Right. And eventually, when I do get my videos up on my website, the other example that I have is when you see Lisa from behind, I have short hair and, I'm a big person. And so I get called sir a lot. And then I turn around and then they're like, oh, their eyes pop out of their head and they're like, sorry. And I was like, yep, I'm a girl with short hair. So that's kind of my education with them. And with the pronouns, getting back to the they, and I actually wrote a blog about this. In fact, it was the word of the year, I think, last in 2019, and added to the dictionary as one of the most looked up words. And it is, especially, I have friends who are, you know, grammatically correct, grammarians, whatever you might call them, and they're like, that doesn't work. And it was like, who am I to say what someone else wants to identify as? I don't
Mhm.
want you to put labels on me, so I'm not going to put labels on someone else.
Mhm.
I had a kid when I was in middle school who wanted to be a mermaid, and that was fantastic. And I was like, teach me about the mermaid culture.
That's you caught me
Sorry, I
off
threw you
guard
for a
on
loop there.
the whole mermaid thing. But on people thinking, call you sir. I've never shared this with anybody on the podcast or otherwise. When I was in middle school, I had long hair. I was kind of short, and I was plump. And we did not have co-ed gym classes. And I remember being in social studies and a girl asking me, "Hey, what are we doing in gym class today?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm a boy." And so
Uh-huh.
it was. I just want to make sure that you knew you weren't alone.
Thank you. I appreciate that. my fellow non-binary person. Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't even think I've shared that story with my wife. I'll have to share that with her later.
Thank you for
So,
sharing that.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're in share mode here. Actually, I'm just kind of in learn mode because I think that, like, from my perspective, like, I don't think I live an insulated life, because I travel a lot and I meet a lot of different people and I'm open to meeting new people. But
Yep.
there are times in my life where I hear something or I see something, I realize how insulated my life really is. I
Hmm.
think, tethering back to what you were saying before a little bit, because we're naturally drawn to people that kind of are like us, look like us, talk like us.
Yep.
And so, going from what you're saying, when people can receive your message because you look like them, you talk like them, and so forth. So I would think that in some ways if we really want to understand, it really kind of would require us to get outside our comfort zone a little bit more.
And to be exactly, and to be receptive to that. In doing research for a presentation that I have coming up, it's talking about the employees, and so the younger people who are coming in, they're like, okay, so what do your policies look like? What does your company shake out? What does your board of directors look like? And I'm a big fan of policies, and so here's what you say you do. Are you really going to do that? And something that really made me think too is that, going back to checking the box, do I want to, in an interview, hire someone who has the similar educational level that I do? So, someone who has a post, so whatever it's going to be,
Mhm.
um, degree, and or is their ability the same as mine? Do they speak the same language? Do we have the same dialect? And in doing the research, if you want a more inclusive company, when you sit down and have the interview with the person, you this sounds rude and crude, but you don't ask the person, what did you do this weekend? Because you want it to be similar to what you've done. And it's like, oh, we do the white middle class things. We go to the grocery store, we take our kids to the soccer game. Well, what if they don't have kids? And
Mhm.
so if you can do kind of more of a blind interview on some of the questions, you may have a better qualified candidate.
Interesting. Now, I want
Hmm.
to go back to what you're saying as far as like when younger people are coming into the workforce. Do you
Yep.
think that there is like a viewpoint difference between people our age and say people that are 18 to 25 on uh, diversity and inclusion? Because the way, like when my son came out and,
Yep.
in high school, and he's 27 now, so this is 10 years ago.
Hmm.
The kids that he went to school with were pretty cool. I mean, he started a gay straight alliance. It was, he had people that came to it and so forth. And so it, they were a lot cooler than the kids that I would have gone to school with, who would have,
Right.
beat the shit out of me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's that correct. Yes. And it is a generational thing. So I graduated high school in 1987. I grew up and it was not okay to be gay where I grew up. I had no role models or anything like that. And that's in my TED talk. And my sister had to tell me I was gay. Okay. I was 27. Oh yeah.
That's
Oh
really
yeah.
funny. My sister,
Yep.
I didn't know. My sister told me, so I just it's really
At
funny.
Thanksgiving dinner. And then she said, please pass the carrots. And I was like, okay, here's the carrots. And I started bawling. Yeah, true story.
Oh,
And
that's an awesome story, by the
it
way.
is an awesome story. And I think that, the generation behind us, they have more role models. They have more freedom. They have more laws that are favoring them
Mm,
versus, us. And it was even worse for the generation before us, if that makes sense. So,
sure it does.
every generation, I think it gets a little bit better for, the LGBT population. And now the struggle is going to be, it's like, okay, gay is kind of the passe and, oh yeah, whatever. And now the new thing is going to be, all right, here are the transgender rights. And we are going to see way more students in school. We're going to see way more parents transitioning. And to me, that's going to be the big thing that the workforce is going to have to be ready for,
Hmm.
or they're going to be losing a great deal of talent.
How do they get ready for that? Because I
What
think
a
that
great
there's,
question.
well,
Hire
I think,
Lisa Koenecke.
well, but that's a great answer.
Thanks.
But I think that there's probably not only a learning curve, but like a cycle that's like anything that you go through. It's
Hmm.
a desensitization, and then an acceptance, and then it becomes where it's not a big deal anymore. Kind of like, all
Right.
right, so the way I kind of look at it is that when Ellen DeGeneres first had her show on TV, and it
Yep.
was really wildly popular sitcom, and then she came out and they
Yep.
canceled it. All right, because the society, it was just too much of a shock for them at that time. But then a
Yep.
few years later, as we got desensitized to things, then Will and Grace came out, and it was, being gay wasn't a big deal. It was like, oh, this is awesome, right?
Yep.
And that, that as we get, and I think the same thing would ring true with an organization, as they have to get, like get used to things, but I would think they would need to like get used to things a lot faster than they are.
Hmm. Yep. And I think a lot of it comes down to the training of what you're saying. And it has to, and so I was in, public education for a long time. And so if the superintendent said it, it was the trickle down effect. Or you had the other way where it's like, okay, the teachers, the community, they're like, this is what's best for kids. And so it would be a grassroots effort coming up. And I think that there needs to be a little bit of both. I think that when you're looking at, if you want your company to grow and if you really want to think about your customers, you're going to have all sorts of people who are out there, not even those who just identify as transgender. But it's interesting when I call a plumber to come to our house. I can gauge on the other end of the phone whether that plumber is going to be comfortable when I say my wife.
Hmm.
And, we live near Madison, Wisconsin, and we had to do research on the community we wanted to live in because even as 50-year-old women of white privilege, we weren't sure what that was going to be like. And I think that, the generation coming behind me and us is looking at, I want to, whether even I identify as transgender or not, I want this company to be inclusive for folks who do. Similar to your son, joining, starting the GSA, et
Hmm.
cetera. So, wow, I think I went off on a lot of different tangents there.
Well, no, I mean, it's something that, say, like for me, like I said, living an insulated life, living, an average white boy life, something I
Hmm.
don't really think about. It's like, I
Hmm.
want to live here. I'm just going to live here. I don't
Hmm.
really have to think
Right.
about the fact, I don't have to think about some of the things that other people might think about because I live in this other world. And I think that the more, like you gave me a realization of something that I never would have thought of before. And I
Hmm.
think that the more discourse we have on items like that, I think um, the better off we all are, because I would never have thought that you would have had to do that.
Right. And, and that is the realization. And it's not that, I don't want to put a flag out that says, whoa, woe is me.
Mhm.
It's now I am here and I can educate all of our neighbors on the fact that, oh, the girls are there. And, the coolest thing was having our neighbor put up a rainbow flag in her yard so that she could teach her middle school boys about the symbolization and, how to be an ally. And to me, I was like, whoa, I mean, that was way cool of how that worked.
That is cool. Well, I think the more you know people as people, the less anything that separates us is really an issue. Like
Yeah.
I look at, like, from growing up in the Navy. I grew up during don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
But I worked with some people that I knew were gay, but
Yep.
it didn't make any difference to me because they were just great people to work with. I
Hmm.
mean, like anybody, like if they were a shitty person, I wouldn't what they did outside of the office, I wouldn't care about, right? But they were
Hmm.
just great people. And so we've, within the military, there's always this like, well, we can't have this, we can't do that. But you think if you ask most of the people in the military, nobody really gives a shit what other people do, as far as their sexual
Right.
orientation. I mean, as long as they're working alongside you, doing what they need to do, because that's, we're all trying to get along and and get someplace.
Right.
And and so I was at an event. Actually, it was in Madison. I was with a military group getting ready to deploy, and there was a woman there that was fairly senior, and she had her wife with her. And I was thinking that for most of her like life in the Navy, that portion of her life had to be a secret. She couldn't bring her wife to Navy military events because it was against policy. But we've turned that corner, and that
Yep.
there and I'm sure everybody that she worked with knew that she was in a same-sex relationship, but they didn't
Yep.
care.
Hmm.
But now it could be really could be more inclusive because we've turned that corner within the military.
And I think it's interesting with
Go
your,
tether back to what you're saying, policy wise.
right.
Personnel wise, I don't think anybody really cared, but policy wise, we're just like, all right, we can do this now. Let's, and nobody cares. But to people outside the military, like, wow, well, we can't do that. Well, you're not in the military, so you really don't know what the culture's like. So shut the hell up.
Right. And it's so interesting on the military side of things. The first house that I lived in, I had a Marine next door and was scared shitless, moving in. And when we pulled up, he was in the driveway drinking a beer and big Marine flag and all this stuff, and I was like, shit, we didn't do our research before that, but pulled up, and I said, what are you drinking? He said, anything that's cold. And I was like, all right, I'll be over. And so we had that bond of, we just like cold beer. And later on I had a conversation with him, and he said, it's so interesting because when I'm back now, he was deployed, and then when he came back, it's like, yeah, you are a lesbian, you live next to me, and that's who I fought for. And so in the military, I mean, you're fighting for people who look like you, who people who don't look like you, people who hate war. It's just it can be such an oxymoron to be able to say, why are you doing this? And so I always, always, always thank anyone who has ever served in the military, because whether they like the gays or not, you're giving us our freedom too. So
Whether you like the gays or not.
Yep.
That is really, that just sounded funny to me. So, um, because you can't catch a gay.
You can't.
That is probably, I think, one of the best podcast titles. I would listen to that.
Yeah. Okay. I
you
should
should-
probably go out and get
You
that
should,
then.
don't probably, just do it. Just, do it. I like that. Now let's shift a little bit, because I think that like your work in public schools really in the school system and as a counselor is really interesting to me, because I'm sure
Yep.
you've had a lot of kids that have come along and probably confided in you, confided stuff in you that they hadn't even with their parents.
Correct. Yep. And the biggest story, and again, I'll go back to my TED Talk, is this changed my life. It was my second year as a middle school counselor, and again, suburban Madison. Kid walks in, seventh grader, says to me, Miss Koenecke, it's easier pretending to be a boy in this town than it is to be gay. So the student obviously was born female, but was like, I'm just going to pretend to be a boy because being a lesbian wasn't in that student's vocabulary or anything like that. And I was like, whoa, I'm a fraud. I have not done my due diligence as a role model to this kid to say it's okay to be a lesbian, to be who you are.
Mhm.
And at that time I was 40 years old, was still a white woman of privilege. And I was like, I need to come out to my students. But I was afraid that I was going to lose my job. And so it's a crazy world out there, but yeah, helping the students is what it's all about.
That's so interesting that 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 worry for you, because in some ways, I mean, like you, like I would look at it is that what would be the big deal? I mean, do they need to know? Do they not need to know? As long as you're doing your job as a counselor. But taking
Hmm.
it from that other aspect of being a role model, I mean, that's a completely different viewpoint that I hadn't really considered, because I would look
Hmm.
at it as like, what does it make a difference if you come out to your students or not, as long as you're doing your job as a counselor?
Hmm.
But from that standpoint, yeah, it really does make it would make a difference.
It did. And, it's interesting because I was also the president of our state school counseling association. And I had to determine on my little stoop, was I going to be out or wasn't I going to be out? And so I decided this was 2013, 2014. So we're talking 7 years ago, you
That's
know,
not that was like yesterday to me.
Right. And it's like, do I talk about my wife? Do I not talk about well, we weren't married at that point because it wasn't legal, but,
Hmm.
we were in a committed relationship. And same thing, then I ran for the National School Counselor Board of Directors. And it was like, okay, am I out here, or do I, you know, do I stay in the closet for that? And I was like, nope, I need to be seen. And I need to be a role model. In fact, I wore a tuxedo to my last event so that school counselors who didn't fit the normal, you have to wear a fancy dress and heels. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I wore my tuxedo hoping that little kids would see that who don't fit the binary, and other school counselors would be comfortable being themselves. Because again, ultimately, I think it comes down to, if I can see myself, if I as a student can see myself in that adult, or if I have some really good relationship with that adult. That's what keeps kids from killing themselves, is that
Yeah.
one supportive adult.
I would agree with well, I think, and just not to shift rudder too much here, but I think that, it was suicide. I mean, we're really fighting a ground war. It's hand-to-hand combat, one-to-one.
Hmm.
That it's not about having trainings. It's not about, it's really about investing yourself in other people. And so I like that you brought that out, in that part of the conversation, because I think that sometimes we think that we can throw a little PowerPoint at something and it solves a problem, and it doesn't. Um,
Correct.
so let's talk about like when you're going into an organization, what are some of the things you do with them? I mean, I like,
Hmm.
from my perspective, I always look at uh, like humor being a great equalizer with people, and
Yeah.
you're a pretty funny person, so I'm sure that
Thanks.
that helps. Well, you're welcome. Um, I'm sure that helps on, getting the message across. But what are some of the things that you do to help them understand the whole inclusion and getting to belonging?
It's that is a great question. Thanks for asking that. I kind of geek out doing research on the company before I will even submit a proposal. And so, they may ask, it's like, okay, the word is a D&I presenter, so diversity and inclusion. Some people are adding the word equity in there, which is even better, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay, tell me what you're looking for. What are your goals? And it could
You know
be
what?
anything.
Would be cool is if like made that, diversity, inclusion. What was the N?
The E is equity.
Equity. If they get an R in there, maybe they could make it like, it could be like diner. They just need to put a couple more letters in there. That would be cool. We need a
I,
diner.
we need a diner, because you don't want to be, you want to be at the table, not on the menu, all that kind of fun stuff. So, ooh, I
I
like
like
this.
that. That's like
Okay.
resources is the R. That's it right there. Okay, so
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I have to get my book published too. So
you're
I'll
welcome.
I'll throw you a bone when that
You can,
happens.
the name of the book, Welcome to the Diner. There you go.
Welcome to You Can't Catch Gay. Oh, I like it.
You can't
Okay. All
catch
right.
gay. You can't catch gay. Welcome to the
Yeah.
diner. All right,
Yeah.
I'm
The
glad we
gay of
worked
the
that
day.
out. Now let's go back to
Okay.
what you do. Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of it is, it's really funny. And this goes back to, things that people of privilege, even though I'm white middle class privilege, being gay, I have to look at, like, before I worked for Lakeland, before I worked for any of my school districts, I had to see in their policies, mission statement, whatever it was sexual orientation enumerated or listed out as a protected class. Because if it wasn't, then I was like, you don't care about me and you don't care about your kids. So that was a school thing. So now going back to the businesses. So I go to their website first, and I always go to About Us, because I want to know, what are they looking to do? Because my job as a speaker, as you know this, Chip, is what problem am I going to solve? I can't fix diversity and inclusion with a wave of a magic wand. I can try,
Mhm.
but it takes more than that. And so where do they need to start? Some people need to start with unconscious bias. Some people need to start with fostering an inclusive climate. Some people need to literally start with diversity 101.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's a difference between someone who is of Cuban descent versus someone who is of Puerto Rican descent, even though they all may be called Latino or Latinx.
Mhm.
So how do we take a look at that? Even though your board is all, I'm going to say this, white men, what is the diversity there?
Mhm.
Because if they are coming from a sense of trauma where we want to, I was born poor and I worked myself all the way up. Well, you had privilege because you were able to. I'm going way too deep into this. So I do research on them. I take a look at their policies. I also take a look at the pictures that they're representing on their website.
Mhm.
Do they have people that are, maybe differently able? Do they have someone who might be in a hijab? Do they have, veterans, whatever it might be? So I
Okay.
do a lot of research.
Well, you brought up a couple times the whole unconscious bias thing.
Yep.
Can you explain that a little bit to me?
Yep. So unconscious bias might be that um, I'll use a Lisa Koenecke example. 51 years old. When I want to learn about technology, of course, I'm going to go to a younger person. And I have done this to my niece, and she doesn't like this, and her husband as well, and I'll call them kids. And to me, it's a term of flattery. It's like, oh, you kids are so cute and young and
Mhm.
smart. And that's blatant. So I've said it to them, but I'm also thinking in my head, oh God, they're so young. They don't know any trials and tribulations yet. So it's that unconscious bias that I bring my luggage, my experiences into taking a look to be able to say, yeah, they're going to be able to do this job or they're not.
Mhm.
So,
And maybe
pretty
like
much
your preconceived notions based on
exactly.
back
Yep.
based on like your own experiences, however limited they may be, or
Hmm.
things that you may heard. And like when you were saying that, made me think that maybe we all have some kind of unconscious bias. Like
Oh, sure.
you when you saw the Marine flag, you had like an automatic thought of, oh, this is what this person's going to be like.
Exactly.
And so, how do you get past that?
You ask questions, and I will a lot of times too. So I'm a big name person, and I want to call people what they want to be called. Okay, because to me that's a huge identity thing. And so if I see someone with a name tag, rather than me throwing my privilege out there and trying to say the name I think that, or pronounce it the way I think it should be, I'm going to ask, so
Hmm.
how do you pronounce your name? And then if they say Lisa, then I feel like a complete moron. You get the idea.
Right.
But I don't ask for Lisa. But if it's a name that I'm not familiar with, then I'm going to say, oh, that's fantastic.
Well,
Hello, fill in the blank name. I'm Lisa. And then I might just leave it at that. So it comes down to,
Lisa could be
you know,
Lisa. They,
I,
that's
I
there's
could be, and
could
there
be
are
Lisa.
Lisas with two E's on there. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
good. Well played, sir.
it could be. I mean, you just never know. You can't make assumptions. I think that's what you're saying.
Look at me. Damn it. Yep, you're right.
So, no, that's your example. I mean, I don't think you can make assumptions on, that's a great example of names. Um, but, I guess, breaking it down to actually get to know people as people, having those
Hmm.
conversations versus just assuming, a certain person is like, uh, this. I mean, I look at it like this. I mean, there are, uh, straight people that I love. There are straight people that I hate. There are gay people that I
Yep.
love. There are gay people that I hate. I'm pretty
Yep.
equal opportunity because people are people, and some people are just assholes. Um, so
Hmm.
period. Doesn't make a difference what they,
True.
you know, uh, how they identify.
Right.
Just my opinion.
Yep.
Um, so now, like we were talking before, I mean, you're pretty funny, and so humor's got to be a big part of, I would think, not only connecting with people, but also in helping, like you connecting with them, but maybe helping them connect with each other to get them
Yep.
to know each other as people.
Right.
What are some strategies you use to, weave a little humor in there to help people not be afraid, and maybe not to be afraid to have the conversations, and
Yep.
make mistakes? Because I think that in the mistake, there probably could be some humor and you could laugh it off versus getting all butthurt about it.
Yep.
And some ones where you could use it to help break down barriers all the way around. So, do you have some things that you do in that world?
I do. Thanks for asking. In fact, one of the best things that I do is I usually start my presentation and I have a picture of a beaver up on the slideshow, right? And so you're wondering where I'm going to go with this. I'm so
I
happy you
I
asked.
really do wonder where you're going to go with this. I do.
Okay, so when I went to high school, our mascot, we were the Beavers. Now, I was our high school mascot. I'm outgoing, I'm very fun, all those kind of things. I also, believe it or not, 1987, I was our homecoming queen. So, yes, you can call me Queen Beaver. That's how I start my presentations. And usually there are people laughing and those kind of things. And so I'll go from there and I'll talk about how, yep, sister had to tell me I was gay. So I told you that story. I do the sir, and then I turn around and then they see, my chest and they're like, whoa. Um, and for me, and it's not that it's self-deprecating, it's more I'm going to poke fun at myself for all things rainbow. Hello.
Hmm.
And I should have known that I was gay because when I was little, I played with GI Joe instead of Barbie.
Hmm.
Again, we're getting into stereotypes, but my favorite toy was a tractor. I hung out with all the female athletes in college, still had no idea. I was a camp counselor. Hello, kumbaya, touchy feely, still no clue until my sister told me.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, and I think about humor. Like I said, it is that great equalizer
Yes,
between people. That if I can find something to laugh about with somebody, it's a lot of our barriers, a lot of things that make us different, just kind of go away because we're communing on a different level.
exactly.
It's funny about when your sister told you that. I remember when my son came out, and my daughter found out. She's like, Christian's not gay. He doesn't even know how to dress. And
Uh-huh.
which was, her stereotype on how things were.
Right.
It's still funny to this day to me. But she sees all things as, one way or another. That's,
Yes.
it's like this, it's like that. There are no shades in between. So
Yep.
um very interesting. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been eye-opening for me in a lot of different ways. Like I said, I don't like to think I live an insulated life, but I know that I do, because I normally gravitate towards people that are like me.
Hmm.
And I have to really work to step outside of my comfort zone to have some of those conversations. But I would think that that would be kind of, if I were you, probably part of your MO. You like, hey, everybody step out and step into these conversations, because you can't help but learn and grow from them.
And with that too, yes, and you are, and I say bravo to you for doing that. For me, I want you to know who Lisa Koenecke, the funny person, is first. Oh, and then by the way, I'm gay. That's usually how I've tried to work things because,
Sure.
I may be the only gay person that you know. And gosh, she's funny.
Hmm. You are. I will agree with that. Now, if after today people want to connect with them, they want to get them a little more Lisa, where do you want them to go?
They can go to www.lisakoenecke, let me spell that, LISAKOE, N as in Nancy, ECKE.com. Or I'm on LinkedIn, and that's LISAKOE, N as in Nancy, ECKE, on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I'd love to connect and help people. I've done consulting phone calls for people from Washington State. I've spoken in 20 states. I'd love to speak in all 50. So, I'm looking at New
There's a
Hampshire and Rhode
there's
Island.
there's a those are the two I haven't spoken in.
I know. That's where I'm going to try and go.
So you can say you've been there. All right.
And then I'll invite you.
No, I don't placate me. I'm mad at you now, because you're just like, I'm gonna go support
Oh,
Chip.
I'm,
But
my
whatever.
bad.
Whatever. I don't care. All
Sorry.
right, Lisa. Now if we were really out, maybe having a couple brews, I might give you some kind of drunk dare. But since we're not, I'm just asking
Yeah,
you random questions for my overstuff would you rather book.
I can't
Lisa,
wait.
are you okay? You're game. Good. And I always
Yeah.
apologize in advance because I never know where it's going to open to. All right.
Okay.
Lisa, first question. Would you rather, for many years, have terrible acne that will go away when you're 30, or for life have a birthmark the size of a quarter in the middle of your forehead?
Oh, acne, 100%.
Yeah, me too. All right. Would you rather, Lisa, win a Nobel Prize for an idea you stole, or become wealthy from an invention that hurts people?
Whoa. I'm going to go with stealing the Nobel Peace Prize because then I would apologize.
All right. Oh, yeah. I can see that. So, all right. Oh, this is a good one. All right, Lisa, would you rather have your nipple ring yanked out, or have to lift 20 pounds with your nose ring?
I can tell you which one my wife would want. I'm gonna go with the nose ring. I got to keep the nipple intact.
Yeah, I probably would too, because
Yeah,
I can. Yeah, that just sounds. Both of them sound painful, but
and ouch.
yeah, and I've got sensitive nipples, so.
Yeah.
Did I share too much? Anyway, so hey,
No.
thanks for being on the show with me today. So much fun. I loved our conversation. Like I said, I learned a lot in the process. So thank you.
Thanks for being open to having me on here, Chip. You're an excellent moderator.
Well, thank you.
Well, there you go, Lisa Koenecke. I hope you liked her as much as I did. I had a great time talking to her. I mean, not only because she's a friend, she just had a lot of great information. Reach out to her. I'll put all her information in the show notes so you can connect with her. Trying to talk her into joining the association. I've been working on it for a while. And if you're not familiar with AATH, check us out at aath.org. And as always, as Chip Lutt saying, we'll keep the laugh on for you.
Thanks for listening to Laughbox. If you'd like to learn more about AATH, visit our website at www.aath.org or email the host at chip@unconventionalleader.com. And if you'd like to be particularly awesome, leave us a review on iTunes. Or tell your friends about how awesome the podcast is, unless you didn't think it was awesome. And then just keep it your little secret. Or tell them it was awesome and then laugh to yourself about how you're going to be wasting an hour of their time while you're out doing something productive, like handing out heads of cabbage at a Miley Cyrus concert. Thanks again for listening, and may the farce be with you.